I'd like to welcome everybody to the very first broadcast of the Stormwater Circuit Rider podcast, emanating from NC State University. And yes, this is an historic day for stormwater in North Carolina. My name is Bill Hunt. I'm a William Neal Reynolds professor in the Biological and Agricultural Engineering Department and an extension specialist, which by the way ties into the name, of course, of Stormwater Circuit Rider. And I'm joined today by another colleague, an extension professional, Mr. Mitch Woodward.
Hello, everyone.
That was easy. And Annette Lucas.
Hello, I'm glad to be here.
Well, Annette and Mitch, we've been working together for what, like 20 plus years now.
20 plus years.
Sure. And for those of you who don't know Annette and Mitch, well, Annette is, what's your exact title with the
I'm the Stormwater Supervisor for the Stormwater Program with the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality.
So essentially the state's stormwater czarina is what I'm hearing.
That's a good way to say it,
That's
yes.
Fantastic. And Mitch, what about, you're gonna hear a lot about Mitch, by the way, throughout our podcast series.
Oh boy. Well, I'm area specialized agent. I cover all counties in North Carolina doing mainly stormwater work, although I do get into wells, septics, hole digging, animal waste, and anything else nobody wants to deal with.
Mitch is also a purveyor of great anecdotes and vignettes, and you'll hear several of those over the course of this next year. So here we are in the studio, our very first broadcast, jacked up, really excited about it, and there's a reason that is our first guest, is we're going to talk about regulations and all the great work that you've done for the last couple of years. So for our listening audience, what's new? What's going on regs-wise in North Carolina?
Well, we've been very busy updating the regulations in North Carolina regarding stormwater. We started back in 2014. The legislature directed us to update our rules, bring them up to date with modern engineering, a lot of it based on research that's been done by Bill Hunt and others at NC State University. We have a great partnership. And so Bill participated with that, but we also had 23 other of our closest friends and stakeholders, and we spent a year and a half walking through all the design standards for controlling stormwater from new development projects. So this is stormwater from homes, from shopping centers, even from universities like NC State. They're all required to treat their stormwater and remove pollution like sediment and nutrients before that water enters our streams.
Okay, so what are some of the neat things about, what are some of the things that this, it's called the Minimum Design Criteria, or MDCs.
That's correct.
So what are some of the, like 3 or 4 key points about these MDCs? What's different now than maybe was different from like 3 or 4 years ago even?
So 3 or 4 years ago, we had a big manual that it had been written, different parts of the manual had been written at different times. All of it was at least 6 to 7 years old. So we wanted to update that. One thing that changed a lot with our stakeholders is we're allowing now the design community, professional engineers and other professional designers in North Carolina to have more flexibility to meet objectives rather than always have kind of arbitrary standards.
So it's not as prescriptive, essentially?
It's less prescriptive, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, and what is the design community's take on this?
Well, we've been working really hard teaching the design community about the new measures throughout the course of last year, and we just started this year as well. And it's been very positively received by the design community. They're excited for the new flexibility and to use their skills. The legislature has been really supportive of our work that they asked us to do. They seem very happy with the finished product.
That's great. Now tell us a little bit more about the genesis of the rules. I mean, a lot of things that happen due to politics, and this is one of those cases, right?
Sure. I mean, there's an interest in, where I sit at the Department of Environmental Quality, what we want is cost-effective stormwater management. You know, it might be a little bit better for water quality to make a stormwater measure twice as big, but if it's not twice as much better, we try to find where, what's the right word, Bill?
You're optimizing the size.
We're the optimization. Yeah. We're trying to optimize the cost with the benefit.
Sure.
So I think we've done a better job in our new rules of doing that.
Well, I mean, the genesis of these rules seems to, I mean, from my perspective, it was the legislature. It was a legislator who basically wanted to see things modernized, right? You want to tell a little bit about that story? Do you feel comfortable with that? Is that?
Sure. There was a legislator that wrote the bill, and he was kind enough to meet with some of the staff that in DEQ that were going to be working on this project. And we asked him what he wanted. Did he just want, us to kind of refine what we already had, or did he want a bigger overhaul to really look at more cost-effective ways of managing stormwater? And he said the latter.
Yeah.
So that helped us with our team when we met with our stakeholders. There was some confusion about whether we were doing a minor refinement or a big overhaul, and we let them know we had the permission and actually the directive to do a big overhaul. So
Right.
that's what we did. We took every design requirement that we'd had prior to that process, and we analyzed it. Was it working? Was it worthwhile? Was the cost worth the benefit? Was it clear? Or was it just arbitrary?
Right.
So
Right. I know one of the things that we changed, for example, was the width of a wet pond shelf. We
Yes.
had 10 feet. It seemed like a good number, but when you start looking at why it was 10 feet, it really didn't need to be 10 feet because we weren't
No.
getting any real water quality benefit out of it, but it still was keeping geese out, and it was still a safety feature, and you don't need to be 10 feet, it could be 6 feet.
Right.
And so that was a
Right.
win, on the size of the pond, but still achieving the types of things. And that was, I think, getting everyone in that discussion, those types of discussions, I think were very enlightening.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think another thing that we were able to do that's very beneficial for water quality is we tried to take away barriers. The best way to treat stormwater is to get it back in the ground, before we develop land. Of course, Bill and Mitch know this, but for everyone else, it rains, usually most of the water soaks into the ground, and it's that rapid runoff and the volume of runoff that causes a lot of the stream degradation.
Yeah, we're going to have a special on stream degradation.
Fantastic.
We've been receiving thousands of calls on this for the podcast.
If not millions.
If not millions. I've gotten, texts in from Venus and Mars, like, tell us about stream deg, and we'll get to that, but not today. But we are excited about it and the popularity. Several 100,000 listeners already, and we haven't even, recorded our first show. It's incredible, really. So what other practices would you say have changed quite a bit with respect to the MDCs?
Well, to me, the one that's changed the most is infiltration systems. And so that prior to this effort, there was an arbitrary requirement for the infiltration rate of the soil that the soil had to infiltrate at least about half an inch of water an hour. But the fact is, that's not necessary. We can still build an infiltration system in different kinds of soils. That infiltration rate pretty much removed infiltration from the list of ways to treat stormwater in the Piedmont.
Right.
So now we just say make the infiltration system the size it needs to be to infiltrate the water into the soil that you have.
So 0.52 inches per hour, that magic sort of...
The magic number.
Yeah, it's like the Mendoza line. For those of you who like baseball, it's like the Mendoza line, where, Mendoza, I think it was a catcher who never was able to hit 200. And so for those of you who don't know, the Mendoza line's batting average is 200. So basically that 0.52 or the Mendoza line of stormwater is now finally gone, to the delight of thousands of designers, I think, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it allows people, like in Raleigh, where land's expensive, you can put your infiltration system under your parking lot.
Right.
So you can park right above your stormwater treatment. People don't even know it's there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to have a couple of special features, of course, in our podcast. Today, you're going to be introduced to the first one is Meet the Kids. So after this Meet the Kids break, we'll be back and continue our conversation on stormwater regulations in North Carolina and abroad. This is our segment called Meet the Kids. So what's your names?
Hello, my name is Joseph. Hello, my name
Is what's your name?
my name's Annie.
Annie. Okay.
Hello, my name is Claire.
Hello, my name is William.
Hello, my name is Charlie.
Charlie. Okay. And so I want to know from you guys, quick question, what is stormwater runoff? Who knows it? What you got, Claire?
I think it's where water goes or goes in a drain.
Water goes in the drain. That's good. What else do you know about stormwater runoff? Bill, Joseph, Charlie?
Stormwater runoff, where water goes down the curb line thing and then into the drain.
Uh-huh.
And then doesn't the drain lead to the sewer or the ocean?
Yeah, it does. It goes through a stream and eventually to the ocean. That's good. So what makes us have more runoff? What are the things that make us have more runoff?
Rain.
Okay, so if you have more rain, you have more runoff. That's right.
Yeah, and snow when it's melted,
Snow
it turns into water, and then the water runs into the pipes, and then it creates storm runoff.
Okay, that's good. So tell me, what can we do as people that makes even more runoff? What land use has more runoff, the woods or a parking lot?
A parking lot.
A parking lot, that's right. That's right. Why do you think a parking lot has more runoff?
If it's tilted on a hill, then the water, when the rain hits the top, then it will go down into the drain, and then...
Why do you think a parking lot has more runoff, Bill, than woods?
Because a parking lot is longer or
Well,
bigger.
okay. What else do you think it might be besides it being even longer and bigger? Let's say the exact same size.
There is soil in woods, and
Right.
the woods will, and then soil, water can go through soil, but it cannot go through pavement.
All right, so we got Bill, Joseph, Charlie, Claire, and Ann. You did a great job answering all those questions. I am so proud of you. All right, well, we're back to the most popular podcast series on stormwater recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the entire universe. And we're with Annette and Mitch, and we're going to chit-chat a little bit now about how people are accepting of these MDCs. I mean, are communities or engineers using them?
Well, they are starting to use them. You know, with engineers, sometimes it takes them a little time to get familiar with things. And I think the workshops that we've been offering, Bill, have really helped. We've trained, 500, 600 people?
Yeah, I mean, we've had
It feels
16
like a
of
lot.
them, so yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's really helping, and we're seeing people embrace them more and more. The nice thing is that if you follow the old way of doing things, for the most part, you've met the new minimum design criteria, but you're not taking advantage perhaps of some flexibility or cost effectiveness you
So you're
could
basically
have.
designing more expensive practices than you need to in most cases.
Right. You're taking some of your options off the table.
Yeah.
Local governments are embracing them too.
That's good.
Getting used to them.
That's
so.
good. And what do you think the most popular practices are going to be going forward with these MDCs?
Well,
I mean, it's crystal ball. Yeah.
yes. Well, wet ponds, people are very accustomed to those, and I think they will continue to be used a lot, especially because they help protect against flooding pretty easily. We're starting to see a lot more sand filters, and I'm delighted that you're going to be researching those in the next couple of years.
We have to get the grant first, but right, yeah.
After you
that's
get the
plan.
grant, well,
Yeah.
let's think positive
That
here.
sounds great.
Yeah, and that'll be really good. So sand filter just filters the stormwater through sand, and we have some data from other states that show they work pretty well. But we want to know more about how they work in North Carolina and how we can tweak the design to make them effective and cost-effective as well. So we're starting to see that more, and I already talked about infiltration, but we're starting to see people embrace infiltration and permeable pavement, which is a type of infiltration system. We're seeing people embrace that more, and that delights me because that protects the stream best of all.
So there's some of the sort of the older school practices with new design features, plus a lot of newer stuff at infiltration based. So that's great. That's great. So you probably didn't. I know you guys know, but maybe now I went home knows. I just got back from China.
Yes.
And had an opportunity to look at some of their stormwater control measures, and they have a big need for it. Yeah. And I had the delight of actually visiting a Chinese hospital.
Sounds wonderful.
It was incredible.
What happened?
I basically got a stomach bug, and
You didn't drink
and
the water, did you?
I tried not to, but long story short is I was there to teach people, right? And I'm like, I need to get as well as soon as possible. I'm like, well, let's go to the hospital. I'm like, but I did. And when they wanted to take blood from me, I was really like, but I did. And they gave me a slow drip, and all of a sudden, I was up on my feet. And plus, I got a couple feet rubs out of it. Not at the hospital, but after the fact.
Did that come with the with the insurance plan?
It's part of the treatment. Part of the treatment. You get a foot rub, you get this drip into your hand. You're there for 3 hours. It was crazy.
My insurer doesn't offer that.
I think that's a good idea.
I didn't even
There
have
must
to
be
pay.
a special special.
It's a special. I didn't have to pay. I'm like, how much? Oh, it's no cost. I'm like, well, there you go. So maybe a benefit. Where you're overseas, a little bit of a benefit. I'm thinking about some of the other stormwater benefits. Like, the Chinese government's interesting in that they basically said we're going to do this thing called Sponge City, and sponge is exactly what they want to hold.
Sounds like
rain.
a stormwater device.
It does. Actually, I'm sure someone's marketing a storm sponge out there, right? But they basically said we're going to turn our cities into sponges. So when it rains, the water is caught in the city and then is slowly released, all right? And they are putting bioretention, permeable pavement, green. I mean, when they go after something, and this is actually what I'm trying to get back at here, is that the national government said we're going to have sponge cities like 3 years ago, and now I visited a site that is, I think, 600 to 700 acres, and the whole thing is going to be an LID, essentially Sponge City's an LID, a low-impact development site just because the government says so 3 years later. Think about that type of turnaround with our MDCs.
That's fantastic. Yes, it takes us 3 years for the rulemaking to happen.
Yeah.
So question, are there design standards, or is that what you are helping them
That's why
develop?
I went over. Like, you guys need to figure out how big your control storm, your water quality event needs to be. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff that they've got to figure out. The government says you're going to do this, and you have an entire scientific and engineering community that is running sort of headlong. I mean, you can just imagine these cars speeding down the highway trying to figure out what the heck to do. So right now, as an American from North Carolina specifically, they have a pretty decent need for me. I kind of feel wanted for a change. It's wonderful.
Is there a Chinese EPA, Environmental Protection
I
Agency,
have
or
no
their
idea
version of?
They have a version
or
of it,
local
yeah.
version? Okay.
But a lot of it is interesting there too, like in North Carolina, or like the United States. North Carolina, in Virginia and South Carolina, they all touch, but they're also all quite different in terms of what is being used, the motivations behind them, in fact, just the coverage of practices. It's the same way there. And the one province sort of north of Shanghai is like apparently, at least according to them, the leader in innovative stormwater management. So it's a fascinating place to visit.
Interesting.
So what was the largest city that you visited there, and what was the smallest, or maybe the average size?
That's a great
that you,
question.
Number of people.
Shanghai I know it's one of the largest cities in the world. It's about 21 million people. It's shocking. The small city I visited, it was Lianyungang City, and that is how you say it. At least close.
You practiced.
I do. I said a lot of Lianyungang.
That was good.
A lot.
Normally we do German.
And it's a small study, and you can't. We'll hit that later. And it's a small city. You can't find it on the map really. A small city of, ready for this, 1 million people.
Only 1 million.
One people never heard of it.
That's like Fuquay.
It's like Fuquay on steroids.
Small.
Yeah,
Small.
That's right. So it's pretty exciting for me in that all the stuff that you've done, and obviously we can't turn around on things as fast maybe as the command and control government of China, but I feel like you have done everything you can and gotten a lot of public involvement, right?
That's the key, is we have a lot of public involvement. So, I felt like working with our stakeholders, we got a better product than we would have gotten doing it ourselves.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's actually a really important take-home point.
Absolutely.
So if people have questions, and I know I've been kidding about the thousands of listeners and whatnot, but hopefully at least several hundred people, maybe 3. I mean, I get my mom, Woodward, you get your mom. We're going to get at least 3.
We can get my mom
your
to call in.
parents.
Yeah.
I might have my kids listen because they're on it anyway.
Absolutely. They'll be proud.
And every time they download it, it counts, right? So there you go. So we'll have at least 10 viewers, 10 listeners. What do you want your sort of take-home message to be regarding how we're doing things in our state, regarding our regs and how we've implemented them?
Well, I'm proud of what we've done. I'm thankful for the efforts of all of our stakeholders. They really invested a lot. I think the product shows that, and people are looking at the stormwater program, other programs in the Department of Environmental Quality, and they're asking me, "How'd you do that?" And they actually think we did it. We worked pretty quickly because they're trying to get done what we did in just 3 years. They're trying to get it done.
That's awesome.
So I'm really proud of that.
And have other states, found out about all the good work that we've done yet and reached out to you?
Next month I have the opportunity to go to Atlanta and meet with EPA Region 4, as well as many of the other states, not just in the Southeast, but across the country. So I'll be doing a presentation about our work, and I'm sure they'll be impressed.
They're going to be green with envy. They'll be green with envy.
They will.
Well, Annette, thank you so much for being our very first guest.
It's my
a real
pleasure. Thank
It's
you
a
for
real
having
pleasure.
me.
Awesome, Mitch Woodward. The
Glad to
best
be
deputy
here.
host ever. And
to
we're
be
going to
here.
hear a lot of Mitch over the course of this coming year, which we're excited about. I'd like to thank our technical director, Simone Keith, for putting all this together and keeping me probably, yes, on track. And just remember, until next time, I'm Bill Hunt, and we're always happy when it rains.